In this section, I want to speak more about the introduction and the conclusion, which are two other key parts of public communication that fit nicely together with the media formula. Most people would be familiar with the traditional outline of introduction, body, and conclusion. In most cases, you'll want to bracket your media formula with an introduction at the beginning and with a conclusion at the end, and so your media formula would represent the body of the talk. So your basic outline would start with introduction, then main point, explanation, defense, illustration, and application, followed by a conclusion. While this may seem obvious to some of you, I did want to address this specifically so that you're not under the misunderstanding that having the media formula in your communication means you don't need to think about an engaging introduction and a satisfying conclusion. Even if your introduction and conclusion are only one line long, you should always think about how these elements can provide the finishing touches to your communication. Both are important, but if there's one you should prioritize over the other, it would be the introduction. Like I said in the example of my son's presentation, the job of the introduction is to be the hook for your audience, to arouse their curiosity and interest. Your introduction also signals to your audience what you're going to be talking about. It's where you tell them what you're going to tell them. Again, this helps them know that they've come to the right place, and it assures them that you're going to deliver on what you promised. So think about your introduction having these two main parts, a hook and a preview. When it comes to your conclusion, rather than thinking about a hook that generates curiosity, think of landing the plane in a way that provides satisfaction and just feels good. Referring back to your introduction or to other content earlier on is a great way to do this. When you reference this previous material, you're tapping into the human brain's love of stories that resolve well. Some public communicators will use a story to do this, including the story in their introduction but leaving it unresolved until the content is done. Then at the conclusion, they come back to the story and they tell you how it ends. When they do this, it's called closing a narrative loop, and this leaves your audience feeling very satisfied. Related to this, you should also think of your conclusion as having some kind of payoff, some kind of reward for your audience for them having hung with you this long. If you are bringing resolution to a story, then this is a good way to do this. Other ways would be saving your favorite point or a very personal connection with the topic until the end of your content. Letting the audience know early on that you'll be sharing something very powerful or very personal at the end of your content helps them to stay for the whole thing. This kind of payoff becomes more important for forms of communication that struggle with audience retention. For a live audience, most people are going to sit and listen to the whole thing unless it's really bad. In this situation, having a satisfying payoff in your conclusion is going to make your audience feel great, but it won't make the difference between keeping them and losing them. However, when it comes to online content like YouTube videos, this payoff is becoming extremely important. With the sheer amount of video content available online, your viewers are unlikely to finish your video unless you give them a reason and incentive to do so. And a satisfying payoff that gives one more piece of secret information, or connects with their emotions, or brings resolution to a story. This is a surprisingly powerful incentive for the human mind. So think of your conclusion as where you bring satisfying resolution and a payoff to your audience. In addition to this, and opposite to the introduction, the conclusion is where you tell people what you already told them. It's where you remind them of the main point and maybe some other key points as well. Even though I said earlier that the introduction is more important than the conclusion, don't take that too far and neglect the conclusion. Too many books, articles, or presentations end with a whimper and just kind of fizzle out. When this happens, the communicator has missed a great opportunity to celebrate with their audience, to remind them of their main point, the call to action, and to bring them some emotional satisfaction that's going to make them want to watch or listen to you again. Conclusions are not meant to be throwaways, but well-crafted endings that make an audience grateful for the post that they've just read, the video they've just watched, the podcast they've just listened to. Let's consider an example. Maybe you're making a video about the benefits of parents reading books to their small children. In your introduction, you could start off by asking your audience, what is the most likely factor in predicting whether or not someone will end up in prison? After a dramatic pause, you tell them whether or not someone's parents read to them when they were young. This surprising truth bomb is your hook, and now people are paying attention. Then you could introduce Jackson, a 2-year-old whose parents read him books on a daily basis. You could then paint a picture of the family's difficult economic situation, as well as the rough neighborhood that they live in, a neighborhood with a high rate of gang violence, as well as male incarceration. This fictional family is going to provide the human story that's going to carry the body of your content. In the intro, you could tell your audience that because Jackson is read to by his parents when he's very young, he's going to experience a number of benefits that his peers will not experience because they are not read to by their parents. This is where you preview in your introduction the benefits of parents reading to your children that you're going to get into in the media section of your content. Once you're into the body of your content, for each benefit, you could walk through a brief media framework, showing footage from different seasons of Jackson's childhood and adolescence. Maybe you focus on 5 benefits: academic achievement, lower rates of mental illness, higher rates of high school graduation, a healthier sense of self and empathy, and referencing your introduction, staying out of trouble with the law. Once you've worked through the benefits, you come to the conclusion of your video where you show Jackson now as a grown man with a family of his own. As you sum up what a difference it made that Jackson's parents read to him, the camera shows Jackson walking into the living room, smiling, and sitting down next to his own 2-year-old daughter to read her a book. In this conclusion, you've alluded back to the content in the body of your video, but you've also brought the story full circle. As the adult Jackson sits and reads with his 2-year-old daughter, just like his parents read to him, the audience feels an emotional and mental sense of closure, of satisfaction. This is the power of a well-crafted introduction and conclusion. So as you build your public communication around the media formula, be sure to give some thoughtful attention to how you're going to get your audience into that content with a good introduction, and then with a good conclusion, how you're going to skillfully bring them out of it.